Hey guys, welcome to the Lean to the Left podcast. As always on the Dixie Dems, we're talking politics, and with me are Arthur Hill from North Carolina and Robert Thompson from Georgia. I'm a Marylander transplanted into South Carolina, and together we're the Dixie Dems. Arthur is vice chair of the Brunswick County, North Carolina Democratic Party. Robert's a Georgia native activist now in Atlanta and has watched his state turn battleground purple over the past several election cycles. Me, I live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and spend my time hosting this podcast and producing the Lean to the Left blog site. Now, today we have with us a special guest, former presidential candidate Jason Palmer, who had challenged President Biden for the nomination, but since dropped out. Jason is a highly successful venture capitalist and leader in the technology and innovation space. He's launched a new initiative aimed at reducing political polarization and empowering young voters to create a new wave of bipartisan leadership. That's a really important undertaking, and we're happy to have Jason with us today. Welcome, Jason, and thanks for joining the Dixie Dems on the Lean to the Left podcast.
Thanks for the invite, Bob, and this is a really important day to have this conversation, so really appreciate it.
Yeah, it sure is. How about filling us in a little bit about Together, first of all, and why you formed it, what your goals and objectives are, and who your partners are in this initiative? Given the just concluded debate between Biden and Trump, it seems like this effort is needed more than ever.
It's so interesting. Almost everybody I talk to says this, and I'm surprised at how many people in a world where we're all supposed to be blue or red are really wanting purple, which is the color we chose for Together, exclamation point. And so the organization was what I pivoted my presidential campaign into. I endorsed President Biden back in late March and early April. And we took the same people that were working on the campaign and we moved them to be working on Together, which had actually been in the works for a few months before that. And Together aims to get 1 million young people registered to vote in battleground states this fall, and to get 20 candidates elected to Congress who are young, who are technologically savvy, who believe in bipartisanship. They actually need to sign a pledge that says they'll join the Problem Solvers Caucus, and who have proven leadership experience in their background. So some of them are leaders in the military who have come back home. Some of them are entrepreneurs that started for-profit companies. Some of them run nonprofit companies. And it really is time to pass the torch to the next generation. Even though I wasn't able to do it in my run for the presidency, I want to help these 20 young people do it in their run to improve Congress.
Okay, so Together has endorsed specific candidates, is that right?
That's right. At this very moment, we've endorsed 4 candidates publicly, which I can talk about, and then we have another 8 more that we've identified, and we're getting them to sign the pledge. And until they sign the pledge and until we give them our first donation, I probably shouldn't mention their names, but I can talk generally about where they are and what their values are. And the goal is to get to 20 that we have endorsed by the time of the November elections. We'll probably get there much sooner in July, if I had to guess.
Yeah, okay. What's the pledge?
So the pledge is a 1-page document, which we've placed online, which talks about that they're going to hold these values to be sacrosanct once elected or if elected, that they believe in democracy, that they believe in supporting young people in their aspirations to improve the world or to run for office. And then finally, that they actually will join the Problem Solvers Caucus and work constructively on bipartisan solutions once elected. And that's a summary in 15 seconds. It's a 1-page document that they sign that basically embodies those principles.
Yeah, good. Okay.
And by the way, I should mention our goal is to endorse 9 Democrats, 9 Republicans, and then 2 independents, or perhaps they'll be Forward Party or Libertarian or Green Party, but we want to have at least 2 of the 20 be either independent or parties that are not really recognized as major parties yet. We believe that voices from across the political spectrum need to be heard. There's no litmus test on any issues in the actual document. It's about working towards constructive solutions.
Okay. All right. You guys got any comments about or questions for Jason about what he's doing?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. Jason, thanks again for being with us today. You brought a certain amount of gravitas to our performance that none of us have. So
You've been
good that
in
you're
politics
here.
a lot longer than me. You have the gravitas.
I just wanted to make a comment and a question. In Brunswick County, I don't know how much you know about southeastern North Carolina, but Brunswick County is currently going through a major growth spurt, similar to what happened in Myrtle Beach in years past. And there's a lot of folks who are moving down here from almost every state in the country. It's growing by leaps and bounds. As a matter of fact,
So that
most of the people who are
his
moving
data's
down here are
accurate.
older and are not necessarily young folks. We're having some difficulty getting the young folks who are still here in Brunswick County to be involved in politics. And I'm just wondering, does your organization have anything to do with generating interest among Gen Xers and Gen Zers and whatever about becoming politically involved? And do you get involved in that kind of activity?
And you're right that the majority of people who are in their 20s and are Gen Z are apathetic or apolitical and don't believe that the process is for them at all. So when we get these million students registered across 300 college campuses this fall, we know that is a very large undertaking. That's not going to be easy. And a big part of how we're going to try to do it is by partnering with athletes, especially. So on college campuses, the athletes are often the stars of those campuses. Sometimes there are also musicians and artists and other student leaders. And so we plan to tap into that vein of people to say, getting registered to vote, participating in this election, the most important election of your lifetime, probably the first election you've ever voted in, is so important. And you can almost think of it as like Schoolhouse Rock or Rock the Vote from the 90s, but updated for today with today's heroes among the students that they look up to. But it's going to be a hard push. The best surveys I've seen said that about 40% of students are planning to vote, have actually registered at this point, and it usually does get to 60 by election day, but it doesn't happen automatically. We're going to be partnering with organizations all across the country. We're not going to come in as an alien force. We're going to work together with the organizations on the ground that are already set up to do this voter registration. But instead of it being just one day of back to school where they're registering people on the quad, let's make it a whole week of voter registration. And then let's make sure that we hit them all with the right social media and text messages the day of the election or when the absentee ballots are supposed to be sent in. There's a whole coordinated effort around it to make sure it actually works.
So you're going to be doing a lot more than just endorsing people. You're going to be actually working and supporting and helping to fund their campaigns, right?
That's right. And I want to be really honest and transparent with you that, you know, a big part of why I came on this podcast and I'm going to do every media opportunity I get is we need to raise money for this initiative. So
Yeah.
I know that we can do this initiative for $500,000 and we have enough sources already to do it for $500,000, but its impact will be this much. But our ultimate goal is to raise $20 million for this initiative, which sounds like a big number, but it's actually small in the grand scheme of $16 billion that's going to be spent on the election, mostly on TV ads that are yelling at you and things that are making you angry. Hopefully we can find enough people to donate 20 million to actually focus on bipartisanship and bringing the country together and restoring some unity in these dark times. But it's going to be hard. I'm an entrepreneur. We may not raise the 20 million. We may only raise 1 million or 2 million, but the goal is 20.
If you raise one or two, that's one or two more than was before. And exactly.
Yeah,
Now,
I was going to go and ask a question too of great that you're going bipartisan and everything. I've actually in the past criticized the Republican Party for saying to be a candidate as a Republican, you have to do X, Y, Z, but I get it. I understand why you're doing that. But when you go and speak to these younger folks, and it's also something that we have criticized on this show together is especially from the right, bills that have already been almost like form bills or forms that they just pass out to these legislatures that just copy paste and then submit. Do you have anything like that, any mechanism? And I don't want to ask this in a negative way. I actually want to ask this in a positive way. Okay, great. You've signed on. You're one of our candidates. You know, go and do this. Go and talk about this on the campaign stop. Have you also gone that far too?
So I'll tell you, living in the life of a startup here, right now we think the toughest challenge is going to be getting the million young people registered to vote and getting them to vote. So that's priority number one. If you look closely, we have some videos that we have out there advertising together right now, and it does say model legislation will be part of what we're trying to do. So ALEC exists for the Republican Party. We're actually going to have an organization that either will partner with or will fund to come up with that model bipartisan legislation. But that's a 2025 objective once the candidates get into office. And so we can't really spend any time on it right now. In fact, I'm asking people who ask that question, do you know an organization that does this? Because as much as possible, I don't want to rebuild the wheel. I want to invest in partners. And you asked about this too, Bob. Who are your partners? To give them more resources. So I could become like an intermediary, like the 20 million that comes to me, approximately $1 million will go to each candidate election campaign. And in the future, if we raise 20 million next year, some percentage of it will go towards an organization that focuses on bipartisan policy. But as much as possible, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but it's on our agenda for 2025.
Okay, are you looking for contributions from individuals or PACs or companies or what?
Yeah, so we're learning as we go. So if you go to our website at togetherpurple.org, right now most of the donations that are coming in are from individuals. However, I spend about 50% of my time on fundraising. I was just out at the Aspen Ideas Festival, and right now I'm at the Nexus conference here in New York. And that is much more working to get larger organizations to invest in together. And so it's just the way it is. As a CEO, you need to look for people who can write $100,000, $1 million checks to the movement. But we really want it to be grassroots and have more than half of the donations come from $1, $50. We're even running a Kickstarter campaign right now where people can get free athletic jerseys signed by the athletes and other prizes. We're going to use every funding mechanism available to try to bring in funds for this unity cause.
Jason, you're looking at, for lack of a better term, representatives from 3 southern states,
Yeah.
South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia. Are any of these states on your target list for work this fall?
Yes, they are. So Georgia for sure, and North Carolina for sure. South Carolina, we don't yet have a candidate identified, but I probably will even, willing to share with you, there'll be 2 candidates in North Carolina we're looking at endorsing. And one of them is Frank Pierce, who we've named publicly. And he's running in a district that's it was an R3 district, meaning it was 3 percentage points towards Republican before the redistricting. Now it looks like it's an R+19 district. So he's a relatively unknown candidate. And in fact, all the candidates we're going to be investing in are relatively unknown in their 20s, 30s, or early 40s. And then I can't, unfortunately, name the second one yet because we're still negotiating with that individual, but I can't wait to talk about her.
Okay. Are you familiar with some of the work that Anderson Clayton has been doing, the chair of the state party, the state Democratic Party in North Carolina? She's the youngest. She's the youngest in the country.
I'm aware like this much because one of the companies I invested in as a company in Raleigh named Learn Platform, and I've heard through the CEO there about what's been going on. But I have to admit, I want to hear more from you. Tell me more about it.
I was thinking she might be an interesting resource for you because she is the youngest state party chair in the country on either side, Republican or Democrat. Also, one of her primary goals is to get young people involved in politics in the state. And she spends a lot of time visiting college campuses and demonstrating for more involvement, getting more people registered. She's doing exactly the same kind of thing that you propose to do on a bipartisan basis, except of course she's doing it very partisan.
Honestly, that's exceptional. So let's do some real entrepreneurship in real time. If you'd be willing to introduce me over email and say we chatted together, like I would love to connect with her actually. And I haven't done that connection yet. Yeah, that'll help us with our North Carolina races.
Okay, great. Good. I'll do that.
Okay, JC, you want to tell us about the other candidates that you have endorsed that you can?
The first 4 candidates that we named, Frank Pierce, I just talked about in North Carolina. And then there's Rebecca Cook, who's running in Wisconsin. And then we also have Luisa Kauaya, who's running in American Samoa. That's a throwback to American Samoa and my victory there during the presidential campaign. Also, a Democrat hasn't won in American Samoa in decades, so it would be a huge upset if we were able to get a Democrat elected in American Samoa. And then Adam Frisch, who's running in Colorado. He actually was former city selectmen in Aspen who ran against Lauren Boebert and did so well last time that he's driven her out of the district. She's now gone to the next door district because she knew that Adam was going to beat her this time around. And he just won his primary a couple days ago. Actually, I actually was at his house and got to see him and his family, and really excited that he has so much momentum now that he's raised $13-14 million. And so that's a district that is formerly a Lauren Boebert district, will soon be. Adam Frisch is a very responsible business background, very respected in the community. He's going to bring integrity to Congress for that district in a totally different way than his predecessor.
Okay. All right. Now, do you have anything more that you'd like to add about Together, though, Jason, before we move on to other topics?
Yeah, since you asked me again, I'll say Together.org. Please go there and donate, or look for our Kickstarter if you're interested in a football jersey signed by one of the athletes themselves. That could be pretty exciting too if you're a big football fan.
Okay, cool. All right. Last night we had the debate between President Biden and Donald John Trump. And Democrats are worried given the results of that debate. What are your thoughts, Jason?
Honestly, it pains my heart to watch that debate. I really went into the debate hoping that President Biden and President Trump would both set kind of a positive vision for the future that's really important to me and make people feel great about the potential leadership for the country. And I saw one man up there who was lying all the time in every single answer and just demonstrating no character. And then I saw President Biden up there saying a lot of things that if you looked at the transcript, he was saying correct factual information, but his delivery, the most important thing he needed to show was energy, and that he could be a fighter on behalf of the American people and that he could beat Trump. And honestly, he fell short on that. He's already saying today himself that I didn't have my best performance. I had a cold, but I was very disappointed in that debate. I know many people contacted me and said they turned it off midway through. They just couldn't keep listening to the debate.
Yeah, I was a little bit sad, more than a little bit sad. I felt sorry for him because I know he had a bad cold. He was probably on cold medication and his voice was very raspy. He looked weak and sounded weak. And that's too bad because it was an extremely important event for him. But aside from, first of all, Arthur and Robert, your thoughts about the debate?
I'm only watching. Honestly, we went out last night and sang karaoke.
Oh my God, you didn't watch it?
And there you have it, Jason.
This guy knows what's important, doesn't he?
There were a couple of TVs on. There were closed captioning. I knew that we were going to be talking about it today, all through the weekend. It just comes down to he's a convicted felon, folks. And us Democrats, us on the liberal side of things, we are the world's worst at shooting ourselves in the feet. And you have got to look at do you really want 4 more years of Trump or longer? Because if you look at what Project 2025 is up to, and they have literally given him a blueprint to just, as soon as he goes into office, to execute. I told Bob earlier, if I were single, I'd already be living in Canada. At least in Canada, which is what, Jason, you're trying to do here. And in the UK, they're going through elections too. They actually have some other parties out there that are substantial. But the campaign finance in this country is, and Jason, you're up against it. Arthur, you've seen it as well. You have to get on one side of the fence or the other. And I'm not trying to discount what happened on last night, but it's just, folks, we cannot have 4 more years of Trump. It's just not a possibility right now, period.
Arthur, how about you? What do you got to say?
Like everybody here, I was disappointed. I was sad. I was scared when I saw that debate last night. But today, he was in Raleigh. He was in Raleigh this morning, and there was a rally for him in Raleigh. And the performance was night and day from what happened last night. He was vigorous. He was determined. His voice was clear. His voice was clear and booming. And he clearly is in the race to stay. I just don't think he's going to. It's in him to resign at this point or to turn it over to another candidate. I think the only person in the world that could convince him to do that would be his wife, and his wife was also a speaker at the rally this morning, and she was equally vigorous and powerful and compelling. I think he had a bad night. I think we can. I think we can get over it. I think we can. I think we can go on. Trump is going to be sentenced next week. The news about the debate will quickly diminish and go to the rear, and everybody will be talking about the 500 years that Trump is going to have to serve in jail. So I think we just have to keep our cool here and take a deep breath and go on. That's my thought.
I'm going to repeat for just on the point for Arthur there what I've said in the past. I think Trump is going to die before he goes to jail, but I'll just leave that to him.
There's always that.
Yeah. Okay. Jason, you've got a little different perspective, right?
I do. I want Democrats to have a very thoughtful and in public conversation about the fact that there are better candidates to run against Trump this fall who not only have a better chance of winning, but who actually have a positive vision for the future. And they are very politely waiting in the wings and even going on TV and saying very good things about President Biden because they want to be good soldiers. But I think we all know that Gavin Newsom would be a better candidate. Gretchen Whitmer would be a better candidate. Michelle Obama would be a better candidate. Pete Buttigieg would be a better candidate for this time. And actually, the list goes on. The Democrats have an incredibly strong bench who will all come out in 2028 because they're all being good soldiers right now. But we are the smart people, and we should be honest about our concerns about President Biden. We should thank him and honor him for his 50 years of service. But it's time for him to be like George Washington and say, it's time for me to pass that torch to the next generation. And it's going to be messy. And it's going to be difficult over the next few months leading up to the convention. But wouldn't we all want to see a debate of those four people or maybe a couple more and pick a better candidate for this fall? The power is in our hands. We just have to be honest about it. We don't have to get emotional about it. It's time to give President Biden his 50 years of service medal and then let someone else take the baton.
Do you really think there's time to do that?
Yes, there's definitely time to do that. In other countries, sometimes they call an election and then a snap election occurs within just 1 month or 2 months' time. The United States has a very slow election process that unfolds over an 18-month to 24-month period. And, we can definitely get our act together, especially because, as I saw when I was on the campaign trail, Biden crushed me really good in many states. I got less than 1% of the vote. He got 70%, 80%, 90% of the vote. But it's because there's this huge party apparatus that's out there in all these states. You guys know it because you are part of the party apparatus in your state. And that organization will work just as hard, maybe even harder, if it was Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or Pete Buttigieg at the top. So a lot of times people think, and another reason I think this is I invest in CEOs for a living. And I also sometimes have to work to move a CEO on and bring a new CEO in. And it's a very difficult thing to do that because you're taking someone out who's been leading the organization, you've been mentoring them, you want them to be successful. But eventually there comes a time when this company, this organization would run better with a different person at the top. And we can do it. We, the people of the Democratic Party, we can do it in a non-emotional, logical way.
All right. So is Together going to do anything to bring this about or help bring this about?
We talked about this on our leadership call earlier today, and I made sure my team is on board with me talking like this with you today. And we've decided that we're going to keep focusing like a laser on getting these 20 young people elected. We're going to get them all signed up. We're going to get them all as much support as possible. We're going to keep raising money. But I also am going to go wherever I'm invited, CNN, MSNBC, et cetera, to share this message. And I want President Biden to know, if I'm lucky enough to be seen by him, that if he's still the nominee, I think he's so much better for our country than Donald Trump. I'm just not sure that the millions of young people and independents will feel the same way and turn out at the polls for you, President Biden. It would be better if you pass the torch to one of these other candidates who gets young people and independents more inspired.
Have you given up your own aspirations to be president?
In this election, definitely.
I know this
You know,
election. But how about a few years from now?
I always, when I was younger and you'd see people on TV saying, oh, I haven't decided, I don't know what I'm going to do, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera. I was like, what? They know what they're going to do.
Sure.
But now I get it because now I'm on the other side and I've committed that I'm not even going to think about it for 2 years. It's just better to focus on building this organization, trying to make together as successful as possible. That really will make me very happy. And the campaign trail was painful. It was like being beat up by Mike Tyson over and over again. And then I happened to get one lucky win.
Yeah, American Samoa. That was pretty good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you feel like this is the 2028 would be the time for you to join the others in seeking the nomination?
I'm not even thinking about 2028 because
Oh,
we
yeah.
have 2024 right here, right now.
Really?
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
really true.
Okay.
You know what's funny is I really know everybody thinks, oh, you have an idea already. I really don't.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit more why, because I'm not a lifetime politician. And as just one example, like OpenAI and what's going on with AI right now, if Satya Nadella or Sam Altman from OpenAI or one of the leaders of Google called me and they said, Jason, we want you to run our AI in education initiative, I actually think I know how to bring, a tutor to every single phone on the planet. And they're already building that. Teams are already building that. And that would be more personal fulfillment for me than running for president or becoming president or something like that. Because I've devoted my life to this intersection of education and technology. And we're on the cusp of a huge revolution in education and technology. So I'm not somebody who's been in politics so much my whole life that like this is everything for me or anything.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Arthur, Robert, you got anything more for Jason before we start talking about our regular stuff?
No, good luck and Godspeed. We can't just sit around and do nothing. I was on a leadership position years ago here with the local political group, and that was one of my biggest complaints. As we would sit around and hem and haw about talking points, I was like, guys, we got to do something. We cannot stop the clock. It's 3:38. It's going to keep on ticking all the way into November, and I'm glad that folks are out there doing something. So,
100%.
There's going to be a discussion along the lines that you suggest, Jason, and whether we want it or not, it's going on right now. And it probably won't, it being the Democratic Party, it probably won't be as organized and tumble free as we would like it, but there will be a discussion, and I'll agree with you on that. And I think it'll be the kind of discussion that'll, in a way, launch the 28 campaign. But I don't think at this point that the Democratic Party is going to be able to, even if it wants to, is going to be able to convince Biden to step aside. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think the only way, as I said earlier, I think the only way it'll happen is if his wife wants it or his family wants it. They're the only people that can lead him to that decision. But there's nothing wrong with elevating the profiles of the gentlemen and the ladies that you mentioned, and yourself for that matter. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And I applaud you in doing that. And I think it's good for the life and the long-term future of the party. Good for you, and good luck with that. And if there's anything we can do in Brunswick County, North Carolina, to help you out there, let us know.
I got another idea too, and I do want that introduction in North Carolina as well. But another possibility is during the presidential campaign, when I was an unknown candidate, one of the ways I tried to break through was debate. You probably know that the DNC had decided there were going to be no debates this election cycle for the Democratic primary for president. But I worked with an organization that I really respect called Free and Equal Elections. And Free and Equal Elections helped us to put on a Democratic debate in January before the New Hampshire primary. And we had 4 candidates actually participate in that debate. And they're doing another debate out in either Las Vegas or Los Angeles. I think it's Las Vegas, next month for the Libertarian candidate and the Green candidate. So Jill Stein will be there, and also Chase Oliver is the Libertarian candidate. I think Cornel West will be there, possibly RFK Jr. And I really do think if people wanted, and I'm throwing this out to the whole world to think about, somebody could get in touch with Free and Equal and see if they would be willing to do a governor's debate, I'll call it, where you could get Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer and maybe Polis, Westmore up on stage and having them talk about what they think is the vision that the country needs and elevate the profile of these alternative candidates. And Free and Equal Elections has been around for 15 years. Larry King was one of the hosts of their first debates that they did, a Republican Democratic debate back in 2008 or 2012. And so it's a great organization that I encourage people who want there to be more debates that extend in creative ways, like this governor's debate idea that I'm just floating right now for the first time.
Okay.
That's a good idea. I'm in favor of that. I think it's good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And Jason, anytime you want to come on our far-reaching show, I'd love to have you again.
I appreciate it, Bob. This is now the third time we've gotten together, and I like you better and better each time. And I hope to make it down to Myrtle Beach and meet you in person sometime in the future.
Well, that would be nice. That would be nice. I also have.
I'll drive down there. I'm only 45 minutes away.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Also, I have a Democratic candidate for Congress that I want to tell you about off the show. All right, guys. So let's talk about what's going on here in Dixieland.
Let me ask you a question, Bob. Should I hang out for the Dixieland portion?
That's up to you. You're happy. Matter of fact, you can chime in if you want to.
Okay.
Or if you prefer to take off, but love to have you. Okay. We had a presidential primary in South Carolina on June 11th, and Trump walked away with 47 delegates, winning 60% of the vote. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley managed to get just under 40%, winning 3 delegates, and DeSantis with 0.4% and Ramaswamy with less than 0.1%, barely registered on the voting Richter scale. On the Democratic side, Biden swamped his opposition with 96.2%, gaining 55 delegates, and Marianne Williamson scored just 2.1%. while Dean Phillips obtained just 1.7%. Unless a major upset occurs, Trump is expected to easily carry South Carolina in the general election, which just sad news, but I'm involved with one of the local county Democratic parties here, the Horry County Democratic Party. And I have to tell you, it's just really concerning because it's hard to get candidates. And it's tough with the Republican edge in this area. Now, in other news, the South Carolina state legislature failed to enact a proposed hate crime bill that would stiffen penalties for those convicted of offenses based on race, religion, national origin, and sexual orientation, among other things. There's concern that the legislature might overturn a 2014 court ruling that struck down the state's previous ban on same-sex marriages, and the LGBTQ community here is really worried about that. What do you guys have going on in North Carolina and Georgia?
In North Carolina, things are really heating up. The gubernatorial race, the Democrat is Josh Stein, who's currently the Attorney General of the state, and the Republican candidate is somebody that people outside the state may have heard about, Mark Robinson, who's currently the Lieutenant Governor, who's made some absolutely outrageous statements in the past about LGBTQ, about he's a Holocaust denier, and he's also said that no abortion, no matter what the circumstance. Period. That's what he would support if he got elected governor. So there's that going on, and it continues to gather outrage and support depending on what side of the fence you're on, and it's going to be a very close race here. I think Josh Stein has an edge at the moment, but it's going to be very close. And there's a lot of fundraising going on and a lot of political activities. Both candidates were down in our neck of the woods yesterday for appearances, and we're waiting anxiously for their first debate, which I don't think has been scheduled yet. Meanwhile, the state legislature, which has a supermajority and is able to override the veto of our Democratic Governor Roy Cooper, they just concluded the short session for this year and they passed a budget. And among the provisions in that budget was a change in state campaign finance laws that allows a donor to give anonymously to political campaigns, provided the campaign contribution comes through one of either the Democratic or the Republican state parties. Somebody who is an oligarch or a multi could donate money to go to the Republican state party or the Democratic state party, and those two parties could allocate funds to Democrats or Republicans in any way they see fit, and no one would ever know the source of the campaign contribution. The Republicans in the state legislature did this, and the bill hasn't been signed by the governor. It's not clear on how all this is going to be handled, but if it is part of the state budget, then he can't veto the whole budget. So we'll see what happens. But when this bill was introduced literally at the last minute of the short session, all 28 Democrats in the state Senate boycotted the vote. So it's pretty clear that the reason the Republicans did this was to change the rules of campaign finance in midstream, so to speak, and allow rich Republicans who want to remain anonymous to donate campaign contributions to Robinson without having to take some heat from other folks in the state. So there's that going on. The other thing that happened was, and this didn't get approved yet, but there's a school voucher program that allows people of any financial background to apply for scholarship funds to go to private schools in the state. And the Republicans in the state legislature want to expand that and open it up to even larger pools of folks who have kids in private schools and who don't need help in providing tuition funds, but are nonetheless eligible for it, regardless of financial conditions. There's that going on as well. And of course, the money that's being used for this program is coming out of the funds that would normally go to public education. And it's yet another example of how state Republicans are trying to undermine the public education system in North Carolina. Nothing's good that's going on here unless this coming election elects some more Democrats to the General Assembly. And that's what we're working on. And that's what the state party's working on as well. It's pretty scary. And that's where we are at the moment.
Okay. How about you, Robert?
So my buddy old pal, Barry Loudermilk. Here in Georgia, we've got 14 or so representatives that we send up to D.C., and everybody wants to focus on that crazy lady Marjorie in Northwest Georgia. But they all vote in this state, including Barry Loudermilk, including all these other guys. But, why is it a somewhat requirement that you have a gun store to actually run for Congress? And why is that a pulpit for someone to stand on a gun store to actually run for office? But Barry Loudermilk, you might recall back on January 5th, he was actually giving tours in DC. There was footage of him showing folks around the Capitol, and he tried to fight, and he said, well, we didn't show them critical, whatever, Barry. But the guy doesn't even do town halls, but yet he actually wrote a letter to the Supreme Court because he wants to keep Steve Bannon out of jail. Of all things, for someone to get all within an uproar about. And this is just, Barry doesn't do town halls because he gets asked these tough questions and he gets spun in circles and he says embarrassing things like he homeschools his kids and he does not vaccinate them. Georgia, we can do better. He has a Democratic candidate against him. And then further down in South Georgia, on the other side, near my hometown, people do not realize that there is a district, I believe it's Georgia 1 in Southwest Georgia, that has had Sanford Bishop in that seat, and a pretty safe Democratic seat down near my hometown that actually votes blue outside of the big city centers. And he, on the Republican side, you had this, he was actually a January 6th rioter, and his whole thing is that he wore a caterpillar hat. Now, why that's, I guess he wants to appear to be a butch redneck or something like that. But he got so fed up in his debate that he actually showed up to, which Barry won't do, and he just walked out of the debate. Well, I believe he lost, but there is a contention going on down there in that traditionally blue district down in South Georgia. Also, speaking of these elections, there was a recent, I believe it was over in West Metro Atlanta, Douglas County. People have to realize that Georgia has 159 counties, for better or worse there, but Douglas County, Georgia, it followed the black guy, I believe he was, that runs the elections for Douglas County. The poor guy, he cannot drive the same route to work every day. Why is it so freaking dangerous to be an election worker in Georgia? Because of all this negative nastiness coming from the right, death threats. Even Fonnie Willis, who I have behind me, she had to just move to a completely different house. This is not good, and it basically makes the U.S. look like a banana republic, and it's embarrassing. Folks, do better. We've got a lot going for us here, and things like Jason is talking about. We can do better than some of these piss poor candidates out there.
Okay. One thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about South Carolina is that MAGA Republican Nancy Mace, who is a one-term congresswoman from the 1st District, which is where Charleston is, what they call the Low Country. She's an ardent Trumper, and her opponent this time around is an young African-American man by the name of Michael Moore. And I interviewed Michael for this podcast some months ago, actually in April, and was really impressed with him and feel like if he could win, it certainly would be a huge improvement over Nancy Mace. Now, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could. That district had been represented by Representative Joe Cunningham, a Democrat, young Democrat, but he was defeated narrowly by just 5,400 votes, or 1%, by Nancy Mace. And Moore is busy right now campaigning, raising funds. And like I said, I had him on my show, and I'm very impressed with
Bob, if you would be willing, I don't mind. Sorry for breaking in, but I would love an introduction to him. He might actually be the perfect kind of candidate that we're looking for. I neglected to mention earlier that all 20 of the people that we're going to be investing in are people who, are running against somebody who's like an election denier or doesn't believe in democracy, but who does believe in problem solving. And he sounds like a perfect candidate, actually.
Yeah, actually, Jason, he's the guy that I was alluding to at the beginning. Yeah, and I'll be happy to do that. I think he's a good man. He had a tough primary, defeated another really good guy, but he won. And I think that if he could win this election, it would just be a great thing for this area. I'd be happy to introduce you to him. Okay,
100%.
guys.
And if I could say one more thing before I disappear.
Yeah.
I do want to say that in this election, we're focusing on candidates who'd already raised their hand and who already were running, like the people you're mentioning. But our goal is that by 2 years from now, we can help recruit stronger candidates earlier in the process, help them find access to training. As I've learned in the last year, there are incredible organizations to train women to run for office, to train Democrats to run for office. If any of you have ever seen the TV movie, it's not really a TV movie, it was released on TV, Knock Down the House, about the Justice Democratic organization that AOC used to get elected. But there are multiple of those organizations out there, and we need to support them and do more to recruit the best possible candidates, and together hopes to do that in future cycles.
Great. All right, Jason, listen, I really thank you for joining us on this episode. It was a great discussion. Yeah, just great. Happy that you were able to do it. I know you're really busy with what you're doing, running around the country, raising money for Together and all that. And so I'm grateful that you took the time to be with us.
Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful rest of your day and great weekend, everyone.
Hey, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and that you found it interesting and informative. Please visit on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that focus on progressive politics and the important social issues of our time. Now, our interview shows stream on Mondays with special episodes on Thursdays. And you can check out upcoming shows, guests, and topics at podcast.leantotheleft.net. Subscribe to our audio version there and to our video shows here at YouTube. And follow us on social media. Facebook at Bob Gatty and the Lean to the Left podcast. Now, it's two. Bob Gatty is one Facebook page, and the Lean to the Left podcast is a second Facebook page. Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at Lean to the Left 1, TikTok at Lean to the Left. LinkedIn at Bob Gatty, and YouTube at Lean to the Left. Now, I hope you'll support Lean to the Left as well so we can keep things going. Just click on the Donate tab at the top of the leantotheleft.net homepage and contribute by buying me a cup of coffee. That'll really help and would be much, much, much appreciated. Now, this is Bob Gatty signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.